Sorry.
There's the light.
It's got 4 attendees.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee. Today is Thursday, May 5th. I'm Steve Pesci, and Councilor Bagley, who is our chair, has asked me to fill in and facilitate as chairman this morning. We're expecting that Councilor Bagley may participate remotely, either by phone or Zoom, but I don't think he is logged in at this point.
Not
Ben's
yet.
going to check. We do have a quorum at this point, though, with 5 of our members.
Mark's online too.
And Mark is online. Excellent. Mark Siracusa. So we'll call to order, and Ben, if you have turned our remote participants on, we'll do a call to order and attendance roll.
So Mary Lou McElwain,
Here.
Steve Pesci,
Here.
Mark Siracusa,
Here. There we go.
Harold Whitehouse,
Here.
Erica Wagonic,
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice,
Here.
and Chairman Bagley. I don't see the chairman on there.
He was there for a second.
Here, sorry, I have to attend remotely today.
It's okay.
You can mark as well.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. All right, so I believe we do have a quorum. We will continue on, and I'm reminding myself and to everyone who's going to speak and participate today to speak up and use the microphones as possible so we can all participate completely. We will start with a financial report, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before I give the usual financial report approval, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. In reference to the Foundry garage, I see the revenues are way up. Is that because of transfer from the High Hanover Street garage?
A piece of that is definitely that. We've also got Bridge Lot closed right now, so we're seeing some increased traffic over there. And public awareness is up. We've also seen a whole lot of new folks coming on to the Downtown Employee Workforce Program. Our length of stay at that garage is over 8 hours, which means the majority of folks that use that garage are working in those positions. So that's very good news to have. And we have a conservative budget, always.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, one more question to her. At the last meeting, it was mentioned by a committee member to put a better-looking sign coming down out of Market Street to direct you to the Foundry garage. Can you comment on that, please?
I don't believe we put a VMS at the Russell Street Triangle yet, nor I'm not sure if we've decided exactly whether we're going to do that or not. It may have to do with how many signs we have in stock, but certainly we could take a look at that and see if that's going to be a good idea again this year.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I move the financial report be accepted as presented.
Motion to accept it. Do we have a second?
Second?
Mary Lou, second. All those in favor, we'll have to do a roll call vote. All of our votes today will have to be roll call.
Mary Lou McElwain,
Yes.
Steve Pesci,
Yes?
Mark Siracusa,
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse,
Yes.
Erica Wagonic,
Yes.
Public Works Director Peter Rice,
Yes.
and Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Move to the public comment section of the meeting. So I'd like to welcome people to move up to the microphone. We'll start with the people in the room. And welcome you all this morning, and please ask you to try to be concise with your comments. I think we're going to have a lot of comments this morning, so welcome. Thank you. And introduce yourself as well.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Bratter, property owner 159 McDonough Street. I'd like to speak to a few different things, and I'll be quick. First, for the neighbors regarding speeding issues, the report supports the ideas which could be implemented. What is known is that a reduction in speed by 5 miles per hour in lower speed scenarios makes a difference as to whether a child, an adult, a senior, or even an animal lives or dies at impact, and reduces the force on the driver by about 2,000 pounds. Creating welcome islands, as I call them, to neighborhoods, as has happened at some of the areas, is a great idea. However, the islands need a sign on a pole on the island which says, "Welcome to the neighborhood, please drive 25 miles an hour or less." Less is more. I saw the recommended signs. I think stick to the point that we want people to drive slower. In some of the areas, there could be exit islands that say you are exiting the neighborhood and show the increase in speed. The problem with all the islands and speed tables is that many drivers see them as traffic calming and are annoyed by them, not as a way to protect neighborhoods from accidents and fatalities. Neighborhoods are the reason for the islands and the speed tables. The goal is to reduce speed, increase respect for the neighborhoods, and reminding drivers to do that with a very basic sign. Regarding the RRFD at Islington and Vine, I think it's a great idea, but I think that's a little bit of a blind corner there, and there may need to be something to alert drivers traveling east that there's a crosswalk ahead, and that I do notice that there are a lot of pedestrians and cyclists who seem to cross there now that the weather is nicer. The RRFD at the African American Burial Ground may accomplish a few things. It could allow pedestrians to cross more easily and safely. Many going downtown who cross down there seem to cross willy-nilly. They are all over the road. They get out of their cars and just cross. At night, it's very, very difficult to drive through there. An RRFD may work as a traffic calming measure where the location is presented. What I found is that State Street isn't too clogged on that end, especially in the summer, and cars seem to turn onto State Street from Maplewood after they've traveled through what I call the traffic light gauntlet, and they seem to pick up speed quite readily because they're frustrated. So that would be my encouragement for an RRFD at that place. Washington Street should remain a two-way or be paired with Atkinson Street going in the opposite direction as requested by the person who presented this. It's been a two-way since I can remember. It's only a short distance proposed to become one-way, and it is likely to be used as a two-way anyway. We see that on Salem Street. The condos that are closer to the end of Salem Street use that as a two-way even though it's not. I am concerned that if it becomes a one-way, that you may see people, when the bridge goes up, using it as a two-way. In regards to the neighborhood parking program, I'm looking forward to hearing the report of how often and what is being monitored during the 2-month extension of this program prior to it being moved forward to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liza Hewitt. I live at 726 Middle Road.
Ms. Hewitt, please do draw the microphone a little bit closer. Thank you.
As you probably know by now, I'm here to comment on the agenda item involving Middle Road traffic calming. I want to thank the Speed Limit Committee, Peter and Eric, for hearing my concerns. I urge the committee to pass the trial for traffic calming on Middle Road to include the installation of an RRFB at the Riverbrook Condominium crosswalk and lowering of the speed limit for Middle Road from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. The proposal says that you are also going to be reinstalling the temporary traffic calming measures from 2021. I assume these are the bollard bump outs. While I'm not entirely sure that these had any impact on speed, I guess it does no harm to install them again. I will just say that the side of the road heading out of town where the bump out area was more narrow, the ability of cyclists to navigate a path down the side of the road was affected, and they often swore quite loudly as they were forced out into the line of traffic at those points. The other side was not affected because it was wider with the parking. It's something to think about. I have a list of questions for the committee, which I hope will be answered during your discussion period, including what area on Middle Road will be the 25 mile per hour, will the 25 mile per hour speed limit encompass? Will that be from Islington Street to Middle Street? When will the trial period end? I'd like to have a date, like September meeting, October meeting, so that the residents know when that area of trial will be. What will the criteria be for considering lowering the speed limit permanently? And what are the benefits of a trial period for Middle Road versus just lowering the speed limit by ordinance along with Islington and Parrott? I guess I do not need to ask the question of why you are not I guess I do need to ask the question of why you are not bringing an ordinance change to the City Council for 25 miles per hour on Middle Road when you need to bring that ordinance for change for Islington and Parrott Avenue anyway. Finally, I feel the need to address the proposal as it looks in the packet to lower the speed on Islington to 25 miles per hour from Spinney to Maplewood. I kept thinking I wasn't reading it correctly. Why would you not lower the speed on the entire length of Islington Street? I really hope that you meant to say 25 miles per hour on Islington Street, period. You have the ballpark at the end of the street. It's dangerous for every one of those children playing at that ballpark and at the playground. Also, please remember that when the skateboard park is built at the stump dump, all of those children will be crossing Islington in that location on skateboards and on bicycles. A mother also contacted me with concerns about the speed on Islington at the old Powder House because there are a group of children apparently crossing from the other side to wait for the bus. If it was not your intention to make Islington Street 25 miles per hour from Middle Road to Maplewood, please reconsider. Thank you, and I have my questions here printed out, so I'll pass those around just so you have them when we discuss.
Thank you.
Good morning. Get my glasses on here. My name is Andrea Ardito. I live at 121 Northwest Street. So I wanted to come this morning to discuss with you about Maplewood Avenue. 2 weeks ago, I was walking through the intersection of Maplewood and Hanover when I was hit by a car. I had pressed the walk sign, waited until it indicated, and just for good measure, as I always repeatedly tell my kids to do, I looked both ways before stepping out. I was in the middle of the intersection when I was hit. I didn't see the driver until she made contact with me. She was going that fast. My shoe came off my foot and flew into the air. A witness told police that right before the driver made contact, I had stepped back. He said if I hadn't done that, I might not be here. I have no memory of this. I like to think that somebody was looking out for me, and with good reason. Other than some bruising, I came out unscathed. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident, but it is not. A year and a half ago, on Father's Day, my family and I walked across the bridge overlooking North Mill Pond on Maplewood Avenue after a dinner out. We saw my then 15-year-old son's friend fishing on the bridge. We chatted for a few minutes and then proceeded towards home. No sooner had we walked into our street when we heard a sickening crash. A driver with too much speed and too much alcohol in his system had collided with the bridge, narrowly missing this teenager fishing. The house that I live in and the family that resided there for nearly 50 years had the most terrible loss of all on Maplewood Avenue. Not far from where my son's friend was fishing, a little girl, Ruth Gardner, 5 years old, was struck and killed by a car. A horrific, horrific tragedy. It is my firm belief that we must do everything in our power to make sure these examples I have just given you do not repeat. Maplewood Avenue is an arterial road that is also a neighborhood road. Children walk to school. They bike, they run. People walk their dogs and enjoy the charm of this walkable section so close to the downtown. There is a Portsmouth School District bus stop at the end of Northwest Street. There is a UNH bus stop. Maplewood, simply put, is heavily used and is very dangerous. In essence, the speed in which people exiting the downtown and those coming in, flying over the hill by Prospect Street, can leave you feeling like you are playing dodgeball both on foot and attempting by car and bike to pull out of Northwest, Marsh, and Dennett Street. Despite a blinking speed sign, sometimes crosswalk marker, and blinking light, cars still use a high rate of speed for this small road. The sidewalks feel very close to cars, especially on the North Mill Bridge. There's no protection from the sharp corner by the old Cindy Ann cleaners, and it is easy for a car to misjudge the curve. We saw that in my previous example. When I cross the intersection on Deer and Maplewood, I jaywalk now. I cross the road by the Green Elephant. My reasoning? At least I can see the cars coming. Ever since my children would walk to school, I would tell them to step back as cars turning right to exit town often have a wheel on that sidewalk. I'm not someone who has degrees in such things, but I can tell you this isn't working. It isn't safe. There will be more close calls, if not worse. I am asking for anything and everything you can do to problem solve and alleviate this. I have lived off Maplewood Avenue for nearly 8 years now. This isn't the first time I've come forward to this committee, nor the first time other residents of and off Maplewood Avenue have asked for help. It's just the first time my fear of being hit happened. Speed bumps near the trifecta intersection of Northwest, Dennett, and March, and at the bottom of Prospect Street would be amazing. I've seen them make a difference further down Maplewood heading towards Woodbury. If you can't do that, can we do rumble strips in that area and again at the crosswalk? Finally, as you look to work on the North Mill Bridge, please put in safety measures like a guardrail and wider, more substantial sidewalks. Please do not make it more arterial than neighborhood. Please enact weight neighborhood area bylaws to not allow massive trucks from wanting to cross the new bridge, as I shudder to imagine semi-trucks barreling down Maplewood. As for what happened to me, I'm eager to hear how you can help make a difference in the safety of Maplewood Avenue. From what I have been told from others in community media pages, what happened to me happens frequently. That should be alarming to hear for all. Indeed, this is a warning alarm that must be heeded. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the, Rick? Yeah.
Good morning, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. Almost got tears in my eyes from listening to that story, and this is what this committee is for, to hopefully be able to help solve some of these issues in Portsmouth. Many years ago, the state had given us a gift. I had learned, working with Eric Eby over the many years that I've been involved with the city, that we have been able to enforce 30 mile an hour down to 25 mile an hour. I mean, and the woman that just spoke, there's a 25 mile an hour speed limit. I'm grateful for the consideration of the 25 miles an hour on Islington Street, but under the proposed plan, it will leave between Spinney Road and the ball field at the current 30 miles an hour, and we're all aware that most people, even my own children that I taught to drive, said it was okay to be able to drive at 5 miles over the speed limit, and we typically do. I just want to go and let the committee know what you are leaving out is 53 homes, which are families, which are residents of this community. 2 and actually I counted 3 as I was making my way here this morning, 3 multi-family units where we have retirement communities that are there and condos. And I have great concern for those residents. I wanted to give a comparison. So like I said, there are 53 homes and 3 multi-family units. A comparison on Beverly Hill, which we all know is at 25 miles an hour, is an unsafe road, consists of 25 homes, 1 church, and 1 preschool. They are bombarded by trucks, deliveries, local traffic, and shortcut traffic. Everyone agrees, Islington Street is subject to similar conditions. I was actually woken up this morning at 5:30 by trucks coming into the city, whether it be Hannaford's, whether it be Sherwin-Williams. They do the best they can when we actually communicate with the managers of those stores, and they do tend to slow down from time to time, but it is a main thoroughway, which, again, consists of many homes. Under the proposed travel, for this road to go from 25 to 30 at Spinney Road, what will end up happening is the traffic will see the 30 mile an hour signs. They will accelerate going up a hill, both daytime and nighttime. Now, we learned as an example on Aldridge many years ago when we made the alterations and narrowed that and put the lines in and the fog lines on the side, we eliminated the center lanes. Because typically, and again, with Eric Eby's help, we had gone and met with challenges that it tends to be a perception of people driving faster, almost like on a highway. A drag strip was one way that it was actually described. And you will have that very thing happen when you go to change from 25 to 30 with the proposed plan that you have in place. Last year, working closely, and again, I have for many years with the city of Portsmouth, we had gone and also learned from Bill Watson and from Peter Rice that a 25-mile-an-hour road was acceptable for sharrows. Anything above and beyond that, at 30 miles an hour, is a condition not met for sharrow use and was strictly discouraged. Islington Street has no bike lanes. Islington Street from the Bridge Street lot to Plains baseball field is right now at 30 miles an hour. You're going to do at least 2/3 of that at 25 miles an hour. And I believe it's going to end up having a drastic effect with no bike lanes there, and it is a sharrowed road. I witness every day very close calls that are on there when it comes to bicyclists. Please, when the motion comes forward, I would like to see an amendment made to include all of Islington Street, to be able to make all the residents and all of Portsmouth safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Richard Smith from 93 High Street in Portsmouth, and I just have a couple of items. One is skateboarders on Hanover Street. They go down right in the middle of the street, so it doesn't seem very safe that they'd be going down. I'm not sure how you can leave that, but I think it's a good idea to not have that happen. Another thing I'm concerned about is the corner of Market, Hanover, and Bow. Especially like out-of-state cars when they're coming into town down Market. They're not really, they don't give a right of way. So I think it's an accident just waiting to happen. Another item is buses down High Street between Hanover and Deer. That corner, a lot of cars are parked and it backs up traffic. I think it's really a safety hazard. And there are residents, including myself, on High Street, and there's a lot of speeders. It's a shortcut. Those are just a couple items. Next time I'll probably have a couple more. If I appreciate your attention to these. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'd like to offer opportunity for those who are remote to give any comments.
Okay, so we have 5 hands raised. We'll start with Annie Pobo.
Good morning, Annie.
You have to allow her to talk. Kevin does that.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. First, I want to thank the Woodbury Ave resident who just shared her experience. I agree with her, and I feel really sorry for what happened to her. I walk a lot around town, and I ride my bike, so I'll completely understand her feeling and fear. When I moved to Portsmouth in December of 2000, I had a car. I didn't have a bike then, and I drove my car everywhere, and I hated being stuck in traffic and having to find a parking spot in town. So over the years, I've changed my behavior, and again, that's my personal story. I'm not saying that everybody should do the same, but for me, the smart solution has been to get a bike or walk as much as possible. I'm grateful I live not far from downtown, but for those short trips, 2 miles, 1 mile, 3 miles, I go to Spinnaker, I go to library, post office, I have to say I go to Kittery, but for those short trips, I use my bike. And I'm grateful that we're gonna hear the presentation today about the bike lane on Meadow Street and that I could answer your survey questions. It's very important that we're all included in this process, that we can see biking in Portsmouth as a bigger story, not just little clusters of bike lane projects here and there. I ride my bike for everyday purposes, not as, I don't wear, again, underwear like that. I wear my jeans on my bike. So it's important to connect all the neighborhoods and to make it safe for everyone. So Middle Street, Woodbury Ave, Maplewood, when I ride in Islington, oh my gosh, Islington, I have to be proactive, or I have to be on the defense. I don't know if that's the correct word, but a lot of my girlfriends don't want to ride because they're scared. But it would make a lot of things much easier if we could all make our streets more complete. So anyway, thank you, and I just want to say thank you to all those who volunteer in this committee for giving the time to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up with the hand up is Jonathan Sandberg. Please do state your address.
Hey, my name's Jonathan Sandberg. I live at 160 Bartlett Street, and I work at the high school. I've worked at the high school for the last 15 years, and I ride my bike there I've ridden my bike out there almost every day, every school day for the last 15 years along Middle Street. And I have a lot of things I want to say about Middle Street, but I'll try and keep it short because I'm respectful of your time. But I do want to say, there's a lot of important reasons why I do ride. It saves me money. It's good for the environment. It reduces my carbon footprint. I feel good about that. I feel good about not contributing to climate change, to air pollution, to making the roads more, not making the roads more dangerous by driving a 2,000-pound vehicle at 40 miles an hour, like a lot of people do.
Personal shit.
And
Oops, I muted the wrong one. How about that? Sorry, Jonathan.
Somebody else was, it seemed like somebody else was jumping in there. Am I wrong? All right. Any case, but most importantly, it saves me time. I can get to school the 1.5 miles. I can do it in about 6 minutes, which is a lot faster than I could do it in a car. And I know it's faster because I pass a lot of people on my way there. And the reason I can pass them is because I can use the right lane, the bike lane, pass people who are stopped at or queued at the lights, and I can go around them when I get to the light at Jarvis. And coming out of school, it saves me even more time because the traffic coming out of school on after school is incredible. It would take me another 15 minutes if I were driving. It takes me 6 minutes on my bike. And a lot of that is because of the bike lane. Because I rode my bike before there was a bike lane, and I could not pass all the cars on the right because the cars would be against the curb, and so there's nowhere to pass them except for if I were to go on the sidewalk. Now there's the bike lane. It makes it much more convenient, and I think that a lot more people would use it if there was more of it was protected. That said, myself, I'm comfortable riding in traffic. I grew up riding in a more urban area, and what I do want to say is about the protected part, the parking protected part from Cass Street. Right, I want to say the part that I ride from Cass Street to the school and back, and from Cass Street to Lincoln, where it used to be parking protected. That's actually not that useful because there's only like 5 or 6 cars that are ever parked there, and that doesn't provide very much protection. 5 or 6 parked cars, and it's not that hard to go around them. The most important part is for me is as you approach South Street intersection and going down towards Jarvis Drive.
Jonathan,
those
do you-
are the most,
Jonathan, do you wanna-
critical pieces of the route.
Jonathan, do you want to summarize your comments? Your,
Sorry, that's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
okay, next up is Paul Spieler.
Hi, I live at 112 Court Street, and I wanted to comment on Court Street, Rogers Street, and Parrot, which I know is on your agenda. I find it strange that there are no school zone signs on either Rogers or Parrot, and that particularly the area between Richards and Rogers, where there are baseball fields, a library, and a school, don't have any speed limit posted. So it reverts to your normal speed limit of 30. And of course it's exceeded. When there's a school dance there, people take off like they're riding in rocket ships. The speed limit posted on Court is 20 near Strawberry Bank. And it's not posted again going from Middle Street into Court or from Pleasant. I think Court Street now is probably the most densely, or will be, certainly when the new housing opens, will be the most densely populated street in the city. And it seems bizarre to me that with the amount, with the number of people there, on the one hand, and secondly, the amount of traffic that picks up since it's used as an alternative way of getting out of the city, that there aren't any speed signs posted. I just mention these things for consideration by your committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Any final comments from anyone online or in the room?
Somebody did just
sorry.
raise their hand. Sorry, Matthew Glenn.
Hello, Matt Glenn, 34 Harrison Ave. Sorry I'm not able to be there in person. I had read through the packet and I saw a proposal for crosswalk islands at Rockingham and Woodbury. What concerned me was the addition of a left-hand turn lane from Woodbury to Rockingham. It's just unnecessary to give another lane over to cars there. It would really narrow the bike shoulder that's there. I feel like a much better use of the space would be a protected bike lane for that 95 underpass. So I hear lots of discussion about speed limits. I think lower speed limits are great, but narrower roads are even better. I hope the Maplewood project moves forward to maybe reduce a lane here or there and slow the cars down that way to make Maplewood safer. But I'm also concerned about bike lanes that don't have protection, because what we have on Maplewood now is bike lanes outside of parked cars, no visual barrier, and so it still feels like a fast road for driving. So I'm looking forward to the Middle Street presentation. I hope that flex posts go back up soon, and I just want to point out there was a very well vetted plan with lots of public input that gave us the parking protected bike lane. So I hope there's an equal chance to participate once we see something from the consultant for a way to move forward in a safe way and return some kind of space for bicyclists on that outbound portion of Middle Street that currently has nothing. The survey was very open-ended, very difficult to figure out how to answer, giving input on what doesn't exist, basically. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work you do. Have a good day.
Thank you, Matthew.
We do have one more person with a hand raised, Rebecca McBeath.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I really just wanted to say how much I appreciate the Department of Public Works and the members of the board working on the calming effects of Middle Road from Middle Street to Peverly Hill. Really had some progress made last year. I'm looking forward to some of those pylons or flexible posts being set up and the crosswalk signs. And just thank you very much, and look forward to hearing the rest of the presentation.
And that looks to be it.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to close the public comment period. We'll move on to item number 5. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Very appreciated. So, Eric, are you going to lead us on number 5?
Oh, you can bring a presentation, sure. Yeah. I think, Deb, you want to go through your presentation?
Sure.
Welcome, Deb.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Debbie Finnegan. I'm a senior project manager for WSP. We were hired by Portsmouth to take a look at a lot of data as well as field conditions to determine what should be done on the outbound lane of Middle Street. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is just project staff. Peter Rice, Eric Eby, and Tyler Reese were very helpful with providing me information to work through this study. Next slide, please. The project goals were to was to conform to the City Council directive from 2021. There wanted to be determined if the plans that were originally built out there were acceptable, or could we modify it and maintain the federal state funding for this project. Go ahead, thanks. Most of you know the project background. This project went on the tip in 2010. There was project funding provided in 2015, public meetings in 2016, and then a design as well as the bid, and the project was completed in 2018. There were modifications, which were the bollard removal, 2019, and then additional modifications were completed, which included covering certain pavement markings, adding crosswalks and rectangular rapid flashing beacons and other signs in 2021. And we were hired last fall. Some of the actions taken by City Council were the installation of the rectangular rapid flashing beacon at Aldridge, as well as a pedestrian crosswalk, the designation of Lincoln Avenue as a bike boulevard, and then they approved moving the parking spaces from the middle to the curb, and remove from Cabot to Lincoln, and that's the section we're discussing today. This is a part of the street prior to construction. It's very wide, as most everybody knows. It's not, it doesn't have any designated bike lanes or sharrows. People were not happy with this configuration. Next slide, please. This was post-construction after the initial projects, which shows the bollards and the additional bike lanes, and providing the bike lanes have the green hash marks to designate that they're crossing a road that's coming into the Middle Street, in this case. Next slide. This is an example of what it looked like after. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the parking is shifted to the curb on the outbound side of the road, and there is not a bike lane. Next slide. This is the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at Aldridge, and you can also just provide showing that the marks that show that the bike lane is crossing a roadway have been blacked out. So these are just some of the changes that were made on the road. Next slide, please. Just another example at Cass Street of removing the parking and the bike lanes and things like that. So just so people, I know everybody drives this every day, but just so you have get an idea of what's going on. Next slide, please. Our role was a third-party reviewer. As I stated before, we did some conditions inventory, which included bike counts, and we gathered speed data and some accident data. We are here to be, we also provide, some of you may have done were able to do a door-to-door survey with a few of our staff going around with a survey to ask and answer questions. It was also available online. We had several responses as well as emailed. Some people emailed their responses directly. And then after this meeting, we will provide a memorandum summarizing all of the data and a final recommendation. Next slide, please. The survey, we had a public meeting on March 10th to discuss the project and the history similar to what you see now. At the meeting, there were paper copies that you could fill out, or you could take the postcard and fill it out online. So it was available March 10th. We conducted our door-to-door survey on March 11th. And then it was available online from March 10th to April 1st. The survey was summarized in terms of, a lot of the open-ended questions in terms of what people liked and didn't like, as well as took a look at who rode their bikes and who walked and things like that. Next slide, please. This is a brief summary of the results. There were 290 responses, 158 of them identified specifically living on Middle Street. 97 were Portsmouth residents. 255 of the people as a total identified as living or working in Portsmouth. 48% of the respondents use the bicycle lanes at least on a daily basis, and 74% of the people have stated they use the pedestrian combinations, if not daily, every other day. To summarize the responses, there were some positive, and then on the next slide are ones that were either, I would say, negative or in the middle. So positive-wise, which is mostly you think of as like the bike lanes help provide a place for the bicycles to be, and as some of the people spoke to this morning, anything to get somebody out of their car, or it's a shorter ride. It's a safer travel route when you have protected lanes. Next slide. And this is the other. I get where this is. There was a lot of feedback about, everybody has a different opinion, which we all agree to. I think in general, people are in favor of a route that shows that bicycles can be sharing the road or bike lanes, that people are waiting for those particular paved markings, whatever they're going to be added, because right now there was several comments about that it's kind of confusing, which I understand, and I know that the city is planning on repainting those particular paved markings once this is done. Next slide, please. Yes, sir.
On that last bullet, you said they are dangerous. Who's the they being referred to?
That was the comment. That's a direct comment. So these are all, we didn't change any of the wording on the comments. I don't know. There were some of these, so you know that these are anonymous. Some of these are anonymous. Not everybody gave their name and address, and so. So the recommendation is to keep the park, as one of the more stated comments is that the parking towards the middle of the road felt very confusing and unsafe for the drivers and the bicyclists. There are grates previously in the bike lane that I know for a fact bicyclists don't want to go over, depending on which direction the grate is going. What I have recommended, this is the Lincoln Street end, that there's an existing bike with an arrow sign at Cabot Street that needs to move down to where actually the bike lane that starts per mine. Now it's on the left side of the page, but I recommended using Sharrows because as it's been working fine without a bike lane. However, I do know after you can put a bike lane in. So I did some reading, and Peter's right, that the person that suggested that 25 miles an hour. This is somewhere between 25 and 35 miles an hour in terms of the speed studies that were done on this road. However, the traffic was very light because it was done during COVID. So some of it was done during COVID. To get back to some data, I am not 100% sure if it was COVID related or not, but in, let's see, May and June of 2021, when they did bike counts, they were somewhere between 89 and 98, depending on the day. And then for some reason after the 4th of July weekend, they dropped off to be like between 55 and 71. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but it was fairly consistent. So there is some people riding on this road. The traffic seemed light, but it was also during COVID. Next slide, please. This is just, and so people know, the blue is parking. The dark blue or purple is handicap parking. The red is a no parking zone, and then so that describes the parking situation. And then the last one at the beginning of this particular project, change it to a share the road or a bicycle symbol sign. Those are the recommendation we have now. Next page. And since it was short and sweet, I guess I'm looking, anybody from this group to ask any questions. I'm not sure.
I just want to be clear, your recommendation is to leave the modified configuration, but to supplement it with Sharrows.
Correct,
Okay.
and signage.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question.
And signage.
And signage, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Yes, Harold.
I'm still confused about whether we have to return any federal or state funding in
Fair.
reference to the changes that we've made.
So I can answer that.
Okay.
I know former mayor reached out to the state, and the state was clear in their response that we needed to do this study and meet with them to review our results of this study. So now, we're gonna bring this through this committee. We'll get it to council, but we're gonna get it to the state as well. I believe the state's gonna be fine with it. It really was a matter just to make sure we weren't missing something that was obvious in terms of safety. And, the analysis based on what I've heard Deb say is that it's an acceptable approach. So we could leave the configuration as it is with the supplement of signage and Sharrows. So I believe, we'll review it with the state. I believe it should be, they will be accepting of it. But we will report back to council once we've done that.
So when will the final decision be made? How long will it take for the state to make their decision?
It's really a concurrence from the state. I don't imagine, it's not like they have to go to governor's council or anything like that. It's purely, Watson. He's just saying yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we'll include that. The other item that I didn't add was the accident data. We did get some accident data, and there were not very many accidents, and my recollection is none of them involved bicycles. On this particular stretch of road, I can't speak beyond this particular project. So, any other questions? Concerns, thoughts?
Just a question for Peter. Could you clarify for the group to the overall resurfacing, restriping schedule? Is that coming up this year or no?
No. We'll be repainting the lines as soon as the temperatures are starting to come up.
Yep.
I believe they're looking at starting the long lines next week, but this will be the last section they do.
Mm-hmm.
But the big pavement job is going to be another year or so out.
Okay.
There'll be a public process because if we propose to do modifications, we'll need input, and this committee will be involved in that.
Could I just ask, is repainting this year going to include re-blacking some of the blacked out
We'll need
stuff?
to.
Yeah, I have to.
We'll need to. Some of it, because it's confusing, it's worn off a little bit.
Yes, Erica.
When the repaving project, my understanding was this was in effect a pilot effort to understand what would happen when the road was reconstructed. Is this a road reconstruction in a year, or is it just a repaving?
It depends on what the general policy direction from the council and from the public is. A reconfiguration of the roadway is much more expensive than just repaving.
Right.
So we would need to make sure we have adequate funds to be able to do whatever is desired at the end of the day. So at this point, it's not determined.
Peter, are you looking for, sorry, Mary.
I was just wondering, are we going to continue to discuss this on down the line, or is this the end of the discussion?
No, this is the end of the discussion.
Okay.
Peter, are you looking for just a summary motion and encapsulating the recommendations of the consultant, and that would be what we proceed with this year? That's what you're asking for from this committee?
Well, at this point, this was a council action that was asked for us to do.
Okay.
So it's really not something that the committee needs to, you could give your opinion, you could, if the committee wants to do a motion to support the proposed recommendation, that would be fine, but really, since it was a council initiative, this is something that the council will be, the one accepting. So at the end of the day, it's bringing it to them and accepting it.
Right. Then I'll comment on it. I don't think there's any easy solution for this stretch for a bike lane. Whether you're driving on Middle or you're biking on Middle, it's a winding road. I think there's difficulty from one end to the other. It's hard to get for people to get out of driveways. It's hard to get out of Cass Street. It's hard to get out of any of the side roads. So I think that we have to go with a basic solution now, which would be the sharrows and better signage. I do think that the lines need to be redrawn, because that does make it confusing to see the difference in the pavement on that stretch of road. But I've driven it and I've biked it, and I don't think there's any easy answer for this corridor.
Mary Lou, would you, I almost feel like it would be wise for us as a group to have a motion where we accept the results of the consultant, which include installation of sharrows, signage, and then the Public Works Department's planned repainting of striping and re-blacking of black things, and that's the end of the discussion for this year. So is that akin to what you're saying?
You just made the motion, did you, Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Bagley has a comment.
Yes, Councilor Bagley, please join in. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Just a question for the presenter. When the bike lanes were initially removed, they were briefly painted on the outside of the cars. Why was sharrows more preferable than that solution?
The reason is, from my perspective, is it's basically what's out there now. It's been working relatively well on that short stretch of road currently, and that's why we did that. Doesn't mean that you couldn't do that. However, I know that change is hard for people, and I think at this point, it was the best solution based on what was out there, and that's what we looked at. However, that does not, and I'm not going to backtrack from my recommendation, doesn't mean that you can't put them out there, but please understand that part of the goal, which I didn't say, was to paint a line to designate the parking area. So there'll be a line, there will be a line defining the edge of the road that's further out, so people will know what that is,
A fog line, like a vehicle?
Like a fog line, yes.
Okay, so that would be the other piece too. Fog line, sharrows, improved signage, and repainting.
Are you making the motion?
I'm happy to, or if
Go ahead, you've already said it.
Okay, well then I made the motion. Does anyone want to support that so that
I second that.
we can go to the council with a clear
Yeah,
recommendation?
yeah. Second.
I just want to make sure, when this goes to council, if they accept the meeting minutes, that this is clear that it's a committee recommendation, not, I don't want to tie their hands to something that this committee has
I
done.
think it also needs to be clear that it's really a council policy decision, and it needs to be broken out separately, so that it's a clear action.
Can that be part of the motion?
Yep.
Yes.
That's a friendly amendment.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so with that amendment, that it's clearly a recommendation, we're accepting the report and the recommendations. Is that the sense of the group? We should
We vote on the amendment first? No?
It's a friendly amendment. I don't
Friendly,
think we have to.
okay, right, all right.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Same.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonik.
Yes.
Peter Rice.
Yes.
And Andrew Bagley.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you all, I appreciate your time.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to move on to...
And Mike Maloney.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
In my defense, he was late, so.
Okay,
One of the most important people in the room.
I'm very
Right
sorry.
here.
Down the fort.
Oops.
Okay, on to item 6, new business. Item A.
This is the yearly request for renewal of the valet parking license from the 100 Club at on Hanover Street. They are looking for the same terms as last year, which is 7 days a week, 5 p.m. to midnight. And it's straightforward, I guess. All the conditions are in the draft agreement that's in your packet. If the committee approves it, then it would go to City Council for their approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Erica.
Second?
Seconded by Peter.
Yeah.
Roll call vote. Yes, any
I have a
any
question.
discussion? Sure.
What was the fee?
But the fee is proposed to increase this year. That still needs approval from City Council. It was previously $675.
Fees committee does it?
Yeah, the fee committee has recommended an increase in the fee this year.
On the budget.
Yeah.
And the budget needs to be accepted.
Okay. All right.
Mary Lou?
So we're voting on something that doesn't have a payment term? There's a blank on that page, on that page. It says,
Yes, because it has not gone before council yet to change to implement the proposed new fee.
okay. And I had a second question, that there's a crossover of the times on the signage. The loading zone is up until 7 p.m. and the valet parking is 5 p.m. to midnight. Has there been a problem with valet parking at that point?
No.
That's
not
what you
yet.
know of? Okay. We wouldn't get involved in that anyway, probably. It's a valet issue.
Yeah, and they haven't made any complaints. You haven't heard anything parking-wise.
Okay.
It's been working out well for them for several years.
Okay. So what if we vote on this and it doesn't have the payment terms? Can we do that? Can we vote on this with a blank?
It would revert back to 675, wouldn't it, Peter?
Yeah, but the
If they don't
payment
approve the
terms
change?
is defined by the city council. It's in the city council's budget. So once the city council's budget is approved, it'll be executed, it'll be incorporated into this. And the tenant is, or the person asking for this is aware of the new fees. So the new fee is what,
That should be 1,500.
$1,500. So it's a significant increase.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just wondered.
And they'll be executing this, you're voting to approve the form and the parking, not the contract.
Okay.
So you guys don't have purview over the
Okay.
contract per se.
That's
the legal
my
part.
We're recommending approval of a...
Okay, that's my question. Okay.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mary Lou McCowen. Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Mark?
Yes, sorry about that.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wygonick.
Yes.
Police Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Peter Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Okay. Item B, Summit Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, I move we place the item on file.
Why? Why are we placing it on file?
Can we hold that until Eric has a chance to give us the
Yeah.
All right.
material?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This request came to us from a resident of Summit Avenue, concerned about the speeding, especially when high school is getting in and out. So we've put out speed recorders at these two locations, and the data is in your packet. It shows that on weekdays, the average speed's 21, with 85th percentile of 25. To compare that to, that's with the school traffic. So we also looked at the weekend traffic, and that went down a little bit, went from 21 down to 19. 85th went from 25 to 24. So the speeds during the week due to the students is a little bit higher. It's under the legal speed limit of 30 miles an hour. There was concern that the location we picked first wasn't accurate enough, so we moved the recorder down the street somewhat, and we had the same results. So there's a graph in here which shows the volume of vehicles at each speed they're doing, and you can see when the high school is in, you have more students or more drivers at higher speeds, and during the weekend, they tend to be the lower side of the speed chart. But it's all below the speed limit, so there really isn't any call for traffic calming measures out here. It's just that you do notice increased traffic in the vehicles traveling at a higher speed when there's more traffic due to school. So it is noticeable, but it's not speeding.
Thank you, Eric. Harold, do you want to maintain your motion, and we'll have discussion.
Second.
Place it on file.
Seconded by Peter. Eric?
I
Okay.
would like to propose that we lower the speed limit on Summit Ave to 25 miles an hour. We have the
Yeah.
data to support it.
Mhm.
It's access to a school where there's a lot of kids walking up and down that road. I don't see any reason not to.
Yeah.
I concur.
There's a
Because-
motion on the table.
I don't know what we do. I'm not
We
gonna
need to
touch
vote
it.
on the motion.
You can come back during our speed presentation and make that.
I don't want to just put this on file. I want to take an
Right.
action. I don't know how I do that.
Well, it's been, the
Yeah.
motion has
I'll
been
retract-
made to,
I'll remove my motion, please. I'll retract it.
all right, I'm accepting of that.
Okay.
I move that we lower the speed limit, whatever that process is, to 25 on Summit.
Recommend to council.
I recommend to council or through interim action that we use this data to support a lowered speed limit to 25 on Summit.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any
Just
further? Yes, Counselor.
Just a question. I know we have the speed limit committee.
Mhm.
Does it make sense to be doing this outside, or it's not a committee, it's a working group, but should we refer this to the working group, or is the data, in your opinion, concise enough here that we should move forward with this now?
I think the data is pretty clear. And what we would probably discuss in the working group is we should get data and look at the data and make a decision, but I think we already have it, so I don't think we need to add the layer of going back to the working group, is my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
The only thought would be if we wanted to notice it on the agenda for a future public meeting, but
My feeling is that the council will do that as part of their process, unless we do it through the interim change.
typically, any changes made by this committee would be on an interim basis, unless you wanted to call it out specifically to not to do that and bring it to the council instead.
I don't want to not have public input. I think public input is a good thing.
Mhm.
I have a hard time believing that people would complain about a lower speed limit that aligns with the data and is in a school district, but certainly people are allowed to have their opinion and are welcome to disagree. I'd love to see it change before the school year, yeah.
The process is a good process in that it allows almost like a pilot of this change, and there's opportunity, there'll be opportunity prior to being made permanent, for if people don't like it, to weigh in then. So I don't have an issue with lowering the speed limit there. It is a short connector between South Street, which is a lower speed limit, and a school. And it's a cresting hill, which is difficult for sight distance. So there's justification to, and the data shows, the data supports it. So I don't have an issue moving forward at this point.
Okay. Yes, Mary Lou?
I have a question for Captain Maloney. Is there police presence there? I would think a couple of good speeding tickets would get around the school to all the drivers that they're going to get a good ticket speeding on that street.
Not necessarily. You know,
well,
in the priority of there,
The assumption is. that
we don't have, it's not one of our roads that we routinely run traffic enforcement on, because of, part of the reason that, Director Rice just mentioned. It's a little cut-through street.
Right.
Certainly, having the high school SRO perhaps at closing, the high school SRO has a number of responsibilities at the end of the school day, but perhaps us having the SRO kind of fly our flag out there a little bit more often during the end of school might help. But
Yeah.
I think it gets admittedly little attention with a speed or a radar. And as we can see, the average speed was 21 to 25 at times, but.
The volume is incredible.
Well, it's a lot.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot
Amazing.
at 2:30 in the afternoon, sure.
Yeah, in the morning. It's
Yep.
lined up down South Street because so many kids either drive or are driven to
They're going
school.
slower on their way in, they're going faster on their way out.
That's for sure. Okay, thank you.
Anecdotally, the traffic patterns improved significantly, though, from when we put in the traffic signal down at
Right.
Andrew Jarvis. Because I drive that way every day around that time. And it's, you know, you get through much quicker now.
Any further comments on the motion on the floor? Okay, roll call vote.
Mayor Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Okay, item C, Coolidge Drive, speed concerns.
Mr. Chairman, this request came from the resident of Coolidge Drive, who's also concerned about speeds, especially when school traffic is getting out at the Dondero. So we monitor the conditions out there, and we came up with the data that's shown in your packet. Speed limit of 20, average speed, again, 21, 85th of 27. So it's in the range of the posted speed limit with the average speeds, and we didn't see a need to implement any traffic calming measures at this location. So that's the recommendation was to place it on file.
Discussion, Erica.
I move to place it on file.
Second.
Okay, Mary Lou, second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Lou McElwain. Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Item D, Washington Street, request for one-way traffic flow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, request came in at public comment, I believe it was last month or the month before. So we've looked at this issue in the past of making Washington Street one-way between State and Court. We conducted traffic counts last year when the barricades were up on Pleasant Street for the Clipper Tavern, because that forces a detour, a lot of traffic up Washington Street. And we also just collected data this past week as well, which is not in your packet, but it is up. It is a slide in the packet now that I've added. And we've taken some measurements and watched the video of the street out there. Three-quarters of the traffic is heading from Court Street up Washington to State Street. There is a low volume coming down from State Street, about 10 to 15 cars at the peak times. So you're looking at one car every 4 or 5 minutes coming down from State Street, with a lot more traffic, 3 or 4 times that traffic coming up. And watching it on video, when a car would actually turn in from Court Street at the same time that a car turned in from State Street, they can see each other. It's only 160 feet from one end to the other. And then there are 4 parking spaces as well. The cars can see each other. They can have eye contact. They wave to each other. One pulls over, the others come by. There is room to pull over. You have a space there where there's 4 vehicles pulled into a driveway. You have space on either end of the street. And the two-way traffic does allow for when the bridge is up. It's very critical to have an escape valve from State Street when that traffic starts backing up when the bridge is up. And this gives traffic an opportunity to get off of State Street, because up at Atkinson, that intersection is quickly blocked at State and Atkinson when the bridge is up. And traffic often has nowhere to go at that point. So although it's primarily used as almost like a one-way street, I would recommend that it stay as two-way because it does work in its configuration. We've never seen anyone having to back up on the street. I haven't watched every hour of every day, but I've watched a dozen hours or more of video, and I see that it works. And keeping that option for two-way traffic during the bridge openings, I think is critical from a public safety standpoint. And the volumes are being able to handle it. It's only 1 car every few minutes coming down from State Street, so that's my recommendation, is to keep it as two-way.
Move to table this request.
Just a comment?
We have a motion. I'm going to second the motion. Yes, go ahead. Comment.
Okay. I saw that the Clipper restaurant doesn't have their seating out yet, and I think that exacerbated the problem last year for Washington Street. I'm not sure if they have an application in.
They are putting the barricades out right now as we speak.
Okay, because I think that will make it more of a problem. It did last year, and I think that's what Pat Bagley's concern is. I've had problems at both Washington and Atkinson with cars that just wait for me to back up, because they can't back up. So I have to back down, especially if there are cars parked there, to let another car in. And if it's a truck, because on Atkinson, because I think both streets are tied in, I think it's hard to distinguish the Washington Street problem without talking about Atkinson also. There is trucks that unload for the Rosa on Atkinson. But I don't think that this two-way street needs to be a two-way street. What happens with a emergency vehicle when they have to come down Washington Street?
From State,
From State.
if it were to be one way,
What happens now?
we would go down Washington Street.
You do. You
We
haven't run into any trouble with vehicles coming up the other direction?
Not that I've made aware of to any extent, no.
Well, I think we should just look at what's going to happen when the Clipper opens, and maybe reconsider this at another time.
Well, there is.
Leave it as
yeah.
is, and reconsider to see what the traffic pattern will be when the Clipper restaurant puts their parking out, their tables out on the parking.
Yeah, I did include that data. We had it from last year when the Clipper Tavern was in place. And that's where showing,
This is 2022, we'll probably see a huge increase.
possibly.
Thank you.
Yes, Harold.
Did this request come from more than one resident in that area?
No, this came from the resident who spoke at public comment a couple months ago.
I put a lot of value in what you said, Eric, about maintaining some flexibility in the system when the bridge is up as opposed to gridlock. And I think that really overrides the idea of manipulating every ounce of safety out of the street. I think the flexibility is important. So I'm going to support the tabling motion for that point.
I don't know that we have evidence that there's a safety concern here. Doesn't sound like there's a crash history. It's a slow speeds and people can see, so they can navigate it pretty well. So I don't think we're ameliorating a safety, there isn't an actual safety exposure. Sometimes that situation actually makes people drive better, so it's.
Cautious. Any further comments? Counselor, did you have any further comments, or Mark? If not, we'll call the question.
No.
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Lou McElwain.
What's the motion,
I
please?
just
Once
wanna-
more.
The
Table it.
motion is to table this.
Oh, okay,
good.
that's what I was going to ask.
Mayor Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney's left the room. Director Rice.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We move on to old business. Item A, neighborhood parking program. Report back through April 30th.
Okay.
There we go. Good morning. The Parking Division appreciates the invitation to speak to the current levels of participation and costs of the NPP pilot through April 30th, 2022, 9 months since the program launched. At this point, we've had numerous discussions as to the pilot's relevant data. Over its lifespan, the division believes the data capably represents the pilot's effectiveness to date. So the participation and cost figures reported today are updated through April 30th, 2020. As expected, the NPP has seen strong participation. Recall that the current iteration of the program allows for up to 3 permits per household, where each must be attributable to a particular vehicle, and 1 transferable guest permit. Additionally, residents of other areas of Portsmouth are eligible for 1 permit, which must be attributable to a particular vehicle. Since its launch on August 4th, the program has seen 430 regular passes issued, 377 within the neighborhood, and 53 from elsewhere in Portsmouth. Additionally, there are 220 guest permits in circulation, totaling 650 overall passes, equating to 259% of the total 251 space available inventory in the Islington Creek neighborhood. So the neighborhood itself continues to be upside down regarding demand versus supply. Total costs associated with the program through April 30th are at $91,650. This figure includes roughly $4,750 in startup costs for items such as signage, supplies, and installation, and another roughly $1,900 in additional early costs, including uniforms, citation supplies, and office supplies. While all of these items have a shelf life, they do not represent costs we see each month, rather once or twice a year. The remainder of the costs are operational and recur at an average currently of $94,4703 each month of the program. So while it was initially decided the program would carry no fee for participation, a subject of great debate prior to the pilot's approval centered around what the cost of an NPP parking pass would be if the program were moved forward permanently. Using the current figures and projecting an average monthly cost going forward, the neighborhood parking program is estimated to cost the city roughly $120,000 annually. Citations are now estimated to bring in a total of roughly $6,000. This equates to about $115,000 in anticipated net costs annualized. So there are presently 650 passes at the current price point of 0. Dividing the projected cost of $114,267 by 650 passes renders an annual break-even figure of $176 per pass per year. If, however, a 15% reduction in participation can be assumed as the result of the city moving beyond the pilot price point of 0, that calculation would then equate to 553 passes in the program, which would suggest an annual price point of $207 per pass to break even.
And that's
So,
pricing guest passes at the same price? as-
correct. That would be pricing everything the same. So this is a basic rundown of positive and negative feedback. It was very difficult to categorize these feedbacks as they were all in longhand form. So we kind of tried to do the best we could. What I can say to this is we can read each one, or we can just discuss anecdotally that about half of them were positive comments and about half were not positive comments. And certainly you can read these here. We can look at them, go over them however you like. Here's a section here that's more not positive. And at the bottom here, I've included the link to the survey so anybody can go in and have a look, as we included in the last presentation. So again, it's about 50-50 on the public feedback. Anecdotally, in our office, we receive a little bit more negative feedback than positive. And I'm not sure, what that means other than anecdotally. That's what we're experiencing in the office. So.
Ben, thank you for that update of
Certainly.
information.
The
Okay.
information I was hoping to see was the capacity for the extra month. So we had seen kind of a drop.
For the shoulder season, yeah, we're basically ticking back up to the mid-60s now. May is starting to see the mid, which is standard for this time of year. It'll get into the mid 60% in terms of occupancy. Sorry.
Utilization, occupancy. Okay.
Yes, I wish. No. So again, we're seeing a pattern that's very similar to last year. In fact, we just had the highest number of sales for the downtown employee parking program that we've had since the program's inception. So we're seeing a very similar ramp up in use of the Foundry Garage facility by employees, as we saw last season when we recorded these data as well. I mean, the graph looks almost exactly the same. So, and that has not resulted in a tick down in the neighborhood that we're aware of, or has it resulted in, well, obviously Bridge Street's offline right now, so it's kind of, the numbers are a little bit skewed to look at data outside of the area when it concerns Bridge Lot. So.
Counselor, did you have any thoughts or comments on this?
Yeah, so this, first of all, thanks for the presentation and the data. I don't think we have a motion or anything on the table, is that correct?
No, we do not.
So I think I might make a motion that we refer this data to the city council for them to evaluate. And the reason I say that is this is really a policy decision, and I don't think it's fair to the committee to opine in one direction or the other. It's not a safety issue. It's really a does the city want to spend the money to support this program, or does the city want to charge a high enough fee? I think in Dover they charge $20 to $25 a month for their parking permit program. So maybe I'll make a quick motion is that we refer this data to the city council to evaluate.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mary Lou. Discussion?
I guess I'll just follow up. If we could get the cost of the neighborhood parking, or I don't think it's called neighborhood parking program, but if we could get the cost of the permits in Dover, that may inform the discussion for the city council, just to have a reference point to what a local municipality is charging.
I would also be interested, can I?
Go ahead, Eric.
If Dover treats guest passes and resident passes any differently. I think when I've in other places, I've seen different rates, and I think that would potentially influence what we would have to charge residents if the guest passes are at a different rate, but maybe other places are using a consistent rate.
I'll go ahead and consult with Director Simons up there and ask him, to give us an overview of his program, if it's changed in the last few years.
Peter, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to note that we're reporting back to council. That information will be provided to council, but it won't be reported back here at this time.
I just want to thank the staff for the amount of time and energy that's been put into this program, implementing it, the data collection, the survey. I think we've done about as thorough a job as possible, and I do believe, as Councilor Bagley said, that it's a policy decision for the council, so I look forward to passing this on to them. So,
Did you second?
I think, did you second, Mary Lou? So Councilor Bagley's motion is on the table. Mary Lou seconded, so I think no more comment anymore. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse. Erica Wygonick.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 7B, Woodbury Avenue traffic calming. Eric.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, in the packet is a graphic of the locations where we've collected speed data out on Woodbury Avenue over the past few years. This data shows that your average speeds are over the posted speed limit of 25, with average speeds are at 28 to 32, and 85th percentile speeds are in the range of 32 to 36. So it is significantly over the posted speed limit of 25. We've attempted measures in the past out here for traffic calming. We've put the year speed signs up. We've put signs up warning drivers are entering a residential neighborhood. So this is an arterial roadway. Arterial roadways typically do not receive physical traffic calming measures such as speed tables or chicanes, but there are other things we can do just to sort of try to pinch the road down at spots, make it narrower. There was a project, maybe 10, 15 years ago at this point, where the road was narrowed up, and that did anecdotally slow the speed somewhat. Obviously it's still higher than the posted speed limit. So we've been looking at other ways that we could possibly slow down traffic as they're entering this area, and one of them is shown in a graphic in your packet, and that's called the Woodbury Ave Gateway. And it's shown, this was developed as part of a plan for this whole section between Rockingham and Dennett. We implemented part of it a couple years ago when we removed the median islands in front of the new Franklin School. Other parts of the project which haven't been implemented yet is putting in a raised median island as shown in this graphic. This would be at the intersection of Rockingham and Woodbury. So traffic coming under the overpass of 95 would then see the pinch point as they enter the neighborhood with signage informing them that they're entering a residential neighborhood. And this type of treatment typically slows traffic down. It gives pedestrians a two-stage crossing maneuver so they can come out halfway into the median aisle and then wait for a gap in traffic the other way. And they're generally effective. And this treatment could also be implemented at the intersection of Dennett Street. It's not shown here, but it would be a mirror image at the other end of this section. The other improvements shown here was proposed left turn lane. As one of the public commenters mentioned, that there's not a great need for it. It was just there is extra width under that overpass, and it's a matter of configuring it in the most efficient way and safest way primarily. And that could be a protected bike lane, or it could be a left turn lane as shown here. Those changes could be worked out. It's mostly striping, so it's an easy change to make. So these are the ideas that we've had, and we could work to implement this. And it's really a matter of getting the committee's feedback on this and input and seeing what measures would be suitable.
Sorry.
Erica.
So excited. I really like the gateway treatment. I think it's really effective. I think the median island is a great idea. I agree with the public comment and your suggestion in terms of I don't really see the value of the left turn lane, especially when the message we're running to send is a slower, quieter street. I would be much more in favor if we have the space of having a painted protection for the bike lane. I think that's much more in line with the idea of the project, but I love the median islands and gateway treatment, and think if there's any way to have any landscaping, that would be awesome, but I recognize I'm pushing my limits there. But I think it's great. Good job. Keep up the good work.
I want to echo what Erica's saying, although I'm a little concerned, and I think Jonathan Sandberg, or maybe one of the other commenters this morning, mentioned this too. When we put in that left turn lane, which I don't really think is necessary, I don't know that that's helping with our speed control concepts. And I'm very concerned as vehicles head what I call north on Woodbury. If we do this plan, there is virtually no protected, the bike lane, if you want to call it that, that exists, disappears, and there's that pinch point. I can almost point to it easier on the screen than I can describe. Right here. So I'm very worried about that. I don't really think the left turn lane is needed, but I would ask that whatever we do, we match what I think is a very successful template using the green paint as is done at South and Middle to make the bike left turn area and or a bike block. And I also think on Rockingham, we should have some sharrows in there for the drivers that might not be expecting that bike trail exit, which is really heavily used, and I use that a lot. And then finally, I don't really see why the sidewalk is so wide on that section of Rockingham.
I think the idea was that would be a multi-use path, so the bicyclists coming off of the bike path would use that instead of the...
we want to keep the bicyclists safely in the road and save the money and have a normal sidewalk there. I just don't see the logic of that, because we don't want bicyclists on the rest of the sidewalk. So that would be the one piece of the plan that I really disagree with, is that multi-use with sidewalk on that piece of Rockingham. I don't think should be there. Let's keep the bikes in the road, accommodate them safely, and and I think your point, I don't want to lose this point, matching the treatment here on the other end of the corridor, that area of Woodbury, Dennett, very dangerous for a lot of users there, everything from bikes to peds to bus users to vehicles.
Yeah, as they head down that section towards the one-way curve, yep.
I move that we support this. I don't know what you need from us.
Support the concept with some further refinement, possibly, yep. Peter, are you?
Yeah.
Are we looking for more feedback?
No,
on that?
I think that's appropriate. I mean, and the feedback's been great. I really like the refinement. The 2 points that have been made, I think are really good ones, and I think we can accommodate them relatively easily. The next step would be to clearly call this out so that the folks on Woodbury are aware of this proposal. So.
When you bring back the refined proposal, could we see both ends?
Sure. Yep.
Is this CIP funded, or is
Yes,
it
it's
state?
there's currently previous monies that were designated for this work.
Great. All right.
Does Eric need to bring it back to us, or?
If I make some refinements to the diagram that's shown here, you'd like to see that again?
I would, with a parallel of the other side of the corridor, so that we can see the whole.
And I'd like to make sure we reach out to the folks that have expressed concern about this section so that they're clearly aware that this is the proposed direction we're going.
Is that the sense of the group? I don't know that we need a formal motion for
Does
that.
that work with the construction timeline?
Yeah.
Another month wouldn't.
Yeah, we have a lot of work going on right now, and this could be towards the fall.
Great to see an improvement. Mark, Councilor Bagley, any further comments?
I guess I'd just comment that it sounds like the consensus is to remove that left-hand turn lane as part of the refinement.
Or turn it
And I would
into a
agree with that.
buffered bike lane, or a bike lane, a protected bike lane, a buffered bike lane just for turning action.
Yes.
Oh,
Speaking so you're thinking of eliminating completely and just?
Yeah, I was thinking that we would get rid of the left turn lane and use that extra pavement to buffer the bike lanes.
On either side.
On either side. That was my intention.
Okay. It's very wide already.
Yeah,
I mean, you have plenty of space to do this and have a very significant bike lane.
I
Why
guess
don't we We'll come back with dimensions.
Okay, yeah, I
And
didn't.
then we'll refine it.
I think we have a great opportunity here for a win-win for everyone. Speed calming, traffic.
Yep.
It's
Good for a change.
Yeah, we look forward to that. Yeah, we've got space to do
Throw some
something.
bollards in to get people walking out the road.
Okay, on to the next item.
I'm concerned about the bus stop. I hope it don't change, you know what I mean?
The bus stop?
Yeah, the bus stop, very important.
Yeah, we wouldn't mess with
Yeah.
the bus.
Yep,
Got it indicated here.
yep,
Yeah, but
yes.
It says maintain bus stop.
Was there a motion on
No, it's just report back.
that? Okay.
Okay, so we'll report back on that. Thank you. Item C.
Item C is the request for a four-way, all-way stop at the intersection of State Street and Union Street. We've done traffic counts at this location and looked at sight lines, and the conditions out there do not meet the warrants needed for a four-way stop. It's, the traffic is much heavier on State Street than on Union Street. When you're on Union Street, attempting to pull onto State Street, sight lines are, fine. I mean, there's a few parked cars, but that's typical of any intersection. So I don't see a need to create a four-way stop here. It would just result in more traffic on State Street rolling through it, not seeing traffic coming on Union Street. So my recommendation is to place this request on file.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Erica. Any further comments, gentlemen, in Zoom land?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary Lou, you had your
I was
hand
just going to
up?
say, it's probably not a problem, except when you see a truck is parked close to the intersection as this one is.
Yes, and
And
there is, yeah,
That's when it's a problem, turning right there.
yes, and there is a sign out there that says, "Do not park here," so.
Right. Okay.
Okay, motion been seconded.
Sure we got
No
him.
further comment. Roll call, please.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
yes,
Erica Wyconic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Okay, item D, I think we've already dealt with. Item E, Rains Avenue.
Item E, we had a public meeting on the proposal to change the flow on Vaughn Street and Rains Avenue from two-way to one-way. The proposal is to bring traffic in from Maplewood onto Vaughn Street and circulate around in a counterclockwise direction onto Rains and then out onto Maplewood. We held a public meeting at the AC Hotel last month. We had one person show up, and they were in support of the project.
100%.
Yes. So this is a change that we made during the construction of the AC Hotel. It worked well at that time, and with the businesses on the street in favor of it, we would recommend that the committee also pass this and bring it to City Council.
Erica,
So moved.
Second?
any discussion? I would say I think this is it's a no-brainer and it's worked well, and I'm glad to hear that the businesses support it and are one attendee from the public, so I'm happy to support this. Any further discussion online? Anyone? Mark, Counselor? Okay,
I'm good, thank you.
roll call vote, please, Ben.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
yes,
Erica Wyconic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Item F, Suzanne Drive.
Mr. Chairman, this is a report back from a latest neighborhood meeting we had with the residents of Suzanne Drive, the Maple Haven neighborhood. We have a proposed sidewalk project in this neighborhood. Some of the biggest concerns we heard from the residents was the speed of traffic and the cut-through traffic. Traffic, especially on a afternoon peak hour times, coming in from Lafayette onto Suzanne and cutting through over to Ocean Road to avoid the signal at Ocean and Lafayette. With cameras, we've noticed the cut-through traffic. I think I already reported that at the last meeting. We're seeing up to 50% of the traffic coming in as being cut-through traffic. So we have proposed putting speed tables at a couple of locations on Suzanne Drive, and this would discourage the cut-through traffic. It would be located on Suzanne Drive near Lafayette, so drivers on Lafayette would look down and see a speed table, and hopefully that would discourage them. If they still continue through, they'd hit another one, and I think after the first try, they would not pick this route again for a cut-through. Also on Winchester Street, there was concerns of speeding on that street, and we're proposing a speed table on Winchester as well. So the neighborhood was in favor of the speed tables. They just asked us to move it over to the entrance where it's shown now, and to discourage the traffic that comes in and sometimes goes to the park and speeds through. This would send a message to people coming in that it's a neighborhood that speed should be controlled. So that's a report back, and that's what the neighborhood is looking for. I didn't know if we had
Should we have a motion?
Do we have a motion?
Move to accept.
Second? Discussion?
Just a quick question.
Yes, Counselor.
The speed table on Winchester Street, I did speak with a resident there. They weren't quite convinced that it was needed. I can understand that Suzanne Drive wants much more because we're trying to get people that don't live in the neighborhood to slow down. Whereas on Winchester Street, I would assume it's all local traffic because it's not really a cut through. My question, and I think I've asked this before, is if we put the speed table in and it's causing more grief than it's solving, it's relatively inexpensive to take that speed table out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There was some pain on your face when you said that, Peter.
Yes.
Is the feeling of the staff that the multiple tables need to be put in at once, or could we phase this and wait on the Winchester one, or
We could wait on the Winchester one.
would that be a good middle road approach here?
I'm perfectly fine. We're trying to respond to residents' concerns. This was identified as an issue during the sidewalk meetings that we've held. The request was to do something to slow traffic. So, if the consensus is hold off on this one until we have further discussion, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
Do we need both speed tables on Suzanne Drive?
I believe so.
Well, there's consensus on Suzanne Drive, even the locations of the speed table, because sometimes that could be an issue, not in front of my house, or I want it in front of my house. But Winchester, yeah, further to study.
Well, I guess then I will make a motion that we suggest proceeding with the Suzanne Drive speed tables and wait for the Winchester. Anyone want to second that?
Is there a motion? Yeah, that's a motion, right?
That's a motion.
Yeah,
It's a second.
Harold seconds. Any further discussion? Peter, did you?
Nope.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci. Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Harold Whitehouse.
Yes?
Erica Wygonick.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, item G. The working group report on speeds. Tyler.
Good morning, PTS. Can you all hear me? So, the speed limit working group of Erica, Eric, Steve, and I, we have come up with a jam-packed packet to present to you today. This is going to be kind of long and potentially a bit confusing, so
Good start.
yeah, let's begin.
Let's be a little more awkward.
Off to a good start.
Tyler,
yes.
come on now.
Ben, next slide, please.
Okay.
So today, our agenda, we're going to have some recommendations. These are things that we would like the PTS to consider a motion on today. And then we will be discussing some concepts. These are things that we have thought about, but we have not nailed down, and we would like to get some PTS ideas as we go back and look at these ideas. Next slide, please. So our recommendations, we have been working as a working group, and we've come up with several recommendations for you all to consider today. The first would be to lower the neighborhood connector target speed to 25 in the complete street design guidelines. It is currently listed as a 30-mile-an-hour target speed. Some of the roads that are neighborhood connector roads are South Street, Miller Ave, McKinley, Harding, and Kearsarge Way. We feel that a 30-mile-an-hour target speed is not appropriate for these roads. It is worth noting that these are design guidelines. This would not affect speed limits. These are only guidelines. We're trying to get traffic to go at this speed. Obviously, we feel 30 is a little steep for some of these roads, and therefore, we recommend lowering this target speed to 25. Next slide, please. So,
Do you want to act on that?
how do we want to do this?
Why don't we, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I'd recommend doing the presentation.
Let's do the whole one. So keep a mental note, that's recommendation number 1.
Yeah, there will be a follow-up summary slide at the end of this presentation to refresh your memory. So, along with that, once we lower the neighborhood connector target speed to 25, there are several neighborhood connector streets with limits higher than 25. This would include Islington from Spinney to Maplewood, which is posted at 30, and Parrott Ave, which has no limit and would default to 30. These streets are not listed with a limit in Chapter 7, and thus have defaulted to the state default of 30 over the years. So there have been questions as to why we are only looking at Islington from Spinney to Maplewood at this moment. The reason to do that is that in order under current state statute to lower a speed limit from 30 to 25, you have to perform a traffic study. So the easy way to do that is with an 85th percentile speed to get a speed, to get a feel of what traffic is moving on the street currently. So we were able to do that on Islington Street from Spinney to Maplewood because the speeds on that section of road are lower than the other section of Islington from Spinney to the end of Islington. So, yes. Parrott Ave, we also have data on that shows that speeds on Parrott Ave are very low. We do not have a issue under state statute lowering speed limits to 25. Obviously, we have not forgotten about the rest of Islington Street. If the 85th percentile does not align with the speed study to support lowering the speed limit to 25, we need to do a more in-depth analysis looking at things like road alignment, shoulder widths, cyclist and pedestrian traffic, volumes, and the density of driveways per mile. Obviously, that will take more time, and that is why we are recommending only this section at the moment, because that is something that we can accurately do quickly. Next slide, please. So that brings us to Middle Road. Middle Road is one of these streets that the 85th percentile is north of 25, as we will see in the next slide. Therefore, we cannot legally lower the speed limit to 25 without a traffic engineering study, which, as we said, will take time. However, we understand there are concerns on Middle Road, and we would like to lower the speed limit. So a way to sort of circumnavigate that is to hold a trial where we will be reinstalling the 2021 temporary traffic measures, the bollards and the bump outs. We will be lowering the speed limit to 25, and we will be installing an RRFB at the Riverbrook Condos. We will monitor and evaluate the speeds over the summer with these modifications, and we will be reporting back. Eric, do we have a rough time of when we would like to report back?
I would recommend at least a 6-month period.
Okay. So we will have a 6-month trial. If we go to the next slide, please. These are our current speed data for Middle Road. As you can see, the 85th percentile speeds are in the range of 37 to 39, and average speeds are in the area of 32 to 33. These speeds are measured at the speed feedback signs. Those are the signs that flash whatever speed you are going at. It's worth noting that these signs are designed to make you slow down, and therefore the speed data may be a slight undercount. We would expect the traffic is going slightly faster than this, as the speed feedback signs are designed to slow down traffic. Obviously, 85th percentile speeds of nearly 40 miles an hour do not warrant a speed limit reduction to 25, and that is why we are going with this trial until we have completed a more in-depth analysis of Middle Road. It's also worth noting that in mid-April of 2021, when we installed those temporary traffic calming devices, the bollards and the painted bump out, we saw a speed drop of about 1 mile an hour. You can see where that red line is right there. We're hoping that the addition of the traffic calming devices and the lower speed limit, we will see a slightly increased reduction in speed this year. We will be monitoring it throughout the summer. Next slide, please. So, Middle Road, we obviously get speed complaints about Middle Road fairly frequently. Middle Road needs a long-term CIP planning to look into traffic calming efforts. This is a screenshot of Middle Road. As you can see, it has 2 travel lanes, a paved shoulder for parking, and a sidewalk with no elevation changes. There is no curbing. This gives the illusion of a wide, straight boulevard, which just encourages speeds. So some ideas that we have brought forward would include a roundabout at the Beverly Hill Middle Road intersection to slow down traffic as they enter Middle Road, raised crosswalks, narrowing the streetscape, curbs, and potentially a realignment of the Middle Road South Street intersection. These are obviously large projects that will need further planning and analysis, but this is a good thing to keep in our minds as we move forward with this. Next slide, please. So, those were our recommendations. These are now concepts that we will bring back at a future meeting, depending on your input today. We have not finalized these. These are just thoughts that we have had that we would like to get your input on. Next slide, please. So the first is a downtown advisory speed zone. This would be a creation of a geographical downtown pedestrian speed zone with a target speed of 20 miles an hour. Obviously, we would necessitate a 20-mile-an-hour warning sign, as the lowest limit currently allowed under state statute, as we have discussed, is 25. We do not know what this geographic area would look like, hence the cloud-shaped form right there. We would obviously need to hammer out the specifics of where a downtown pedestrian zone would be. Next slide, please. It has been mentioned before that there could be an advanced crosswalk, stencil, or decal. So we are thinking of potentially designing and installing stencils and decals, reminding pedestrians to be alert as they enter crosswalks within the downtown pedestrian zone. It's important to note that this would only be for that downtown pedestrian zone. We're not proposing to do this at every crosswalk in the city. Next slide, please. And the last today is neighborhood gateway signage. That we would want to develop a standard Portsmouth sign for key neighborhood entry points. This is not equivalent to the larger municipal entry signs that you see, like on Sagamore Ave, for instance. These signs would include the name of the neighborhood being entered, like the Elm Park or the Frank Jones Farm neighborhood, the posted limit, and a reminder to respect the speed limit or not litter, or any other message that we would like to portray to drivers. A good example of Steve brought this forward. A good example of this one right here, I believe, is.
Yeah, I just want to let people know this was just an example of a similar sign in Durham, and the point was made earlier in comment, and we have in our notes that whatever Portsmouth would design would include the speed limit appropriate to that section, and just a reminder about safe driving. So just an example of other communities have done these kind of things. The downside is it's a lot of signs, and it's a lot of signs, a lot of sign clutter. Anyway, something to think about.
Next slide, please, Ben. So in summary, we have recommendations to the committee. These are things that we would like you to consider a motion on today. This includes lowering the complete streets design guidelines for neighborhood connectors from 30 to 25, an ordinance change for those true streets, Islington from Spinney to Maplewood and Parrott Ave, lower those speed limits to 25 as we currently have the data that would necessitate a traffic study. That has been completed. We have the data, and we can do that under current state law. And to re-implement the temporary traffic measures on Middle Road with a 25-mile-an-hour limit for a 6-month trial period, along with an RFB at Riverbrook Condos. We also want you to keep in mind future improvements for this corridor. So a summary of, you want to go ahead, Steve?
Well, I was thinking maybe it would be wise to stop at the recommendations, and let's discuss the recommendations first as a group, and then we'll discuss the concepts separately. And I would only amend the recommendations we earlier today had discussed adding Summit Avenue. So we would add that to the Islington section and Parrott Avenue and Summit Avenue, just to keep it clean. So if people are amenable to that, I guess I would like to accept a motion on the recommendation package. Yes.
I do think it is important to add that Summit Ave is a very good example of a street that we have data for, and we can lower immediately. This is what is happening for Islington from Spinney to Maplewood and Parrott. That is why we are not looking at the other section of Islington currently. I think this is a good
just
example.
Before we have comment, I very much appreciate the multiple comments today on the full length of Islington, but Tyler's been very clear about the why we recommended section, and I would just say that what we've been trying to do with the working group, and staff has been fantastic, is to be both holistic, comprehensive, but also do this the right way. Do it with a legal basis. So hence the step approach on this.
Mr. Chairman, did the PD have any comment in reference to enforcement on Summit Avenue? Did the captain say anything about? Oh, no.
I did, Harold. I apologize. I did. Generally speaking, that's not a street that we dedicate the significant traffic enforcement too. But we did talk about having at exit and at opening and closing of schools, having the high school resource officer monitor that for speed.
So I'd like to throw that motion on the table that we look at the 3 recommendations as a package with the modification of adding Summit Avenue. And if there would be a second to that, we could have discussion. Harold seconded. Discussion. Peter.
I'm a little confused about, well, we have we're doing a pilot or whatever you call it, a trial on Middle Road. I'm not sure why we wouldn't do something similar on that section of Islington. We just call it a trial. We don't, we have the data to show the section from Spinney to Maplewood that could go permanent. But the request has come in to extend that, and if we're already doing it as a trial on Middle, why not try it as a trial as well on, to see if that does anything. It has been something that has been brought up in the past. It was something that we talked about, for those of you who may remember, prior to doing the sidewalk project. There was a lot of concern, and at the time we said, well, once the sidewalk project was done, we could come back and revisit it.
Right.
So I think it'd be appropriate to do that section as a trial. And so I would like to make a motion to amend the motion. It's a friendly amendment if acceptable.
That's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Acceptable.
Okay.
One comment. In this presentation, what really caught my eye, and I think we should give it top priority, and that is the downtown, creation of a geographic downtown speed limit for pedestrians. I like that idea.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to that as a concept next. Yep. Erica.
I got a lot of comments.
Okay.
I think a couple of things that I
We're on
want
the
to.
advisory.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I think, yeah.
Did I roll my eyes?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, just, that makes sense. So, the first thing I want to say is, and the reason that we're proposing the traffic calming measures with the speed limit reduction on Middle Road is not because that circumvents the state statute, but because lowering the speed limit on its own, especially if the data doesn't support it, doesn't have a ton of data. There's not a lot of evidence that would effectively reduce the speed limit. But if you do traffic calming measures with a speed limit reduction, it's a lot more likely to be successful. So the intention here is to try and get the speeds that we'd like to see on Middle Road and support that with both a speed limit change and the infrastructure change. And so I just want to clarify that. I also want to clarify, I don't think we're recommending specific long-term improvements for Middle Road at this point in time. Those were brainstormed, so I don't think those should be part of our motion. Those are more the concepts to consider.
Well, it says temporary.
No, but at the end, the last
Long-term
improvements is part of the blues.
Oh, strike that out.
That, I think that's, we like those, their ideas we're just thinking
Okay.
about and talking about, but I don't think that should be something that we've moved to recommend those things.
I'm comfortable striking it out, but we are exploring long-term improvements, and no matter what we do, it's gonna come back for public discussion.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we
So,
just?
but
We support the idea of
Yep, that's
long-term
fine.
improvements, but I want to be clear that we're not specifically recommending
That's fine.
those long-term improvements.
Erica, if I could just
Yeah.
quickly comment to the difference between Middle and Islington. I think you're correct, in that, there's little supporting data that shows just changing the speed limit does effectively. But I think this would be a great opportunity to do one where we actually do some additional supplemental and see if it impacts it, and one that does not, and just, be able to say, here, this is, had no market change at all. This one did have some change, so therefore, if we're gonna really wanna affect the speed limit on Islington, we need to do some configuration changes.
Peter, don't we under the next group, item 8B, Islington Street and Vine Street, RRFB, wouldn't that be in the pilot area?
That would be in the pilot area, correct?
So if we put that in, then it's the same thing we're doing on Middle. Well, it's actually a permanent installation, but.
I'm not sure when we can
Not
speak to this
decided.
when we get to Vine.
Anyway.
I'm fine, I think having some rationale behind it is important.
I agree.
And/or maybe there's other traffic calming measures, temporary traffic calming measures we want to explore for that section of Islington. I'm not, I think one other thing I wanted to kind of reinforce here is that the working group is trying really hard, and these are messages people have said, but I just want to reinforce them. We're trying to be really thoughtful and systematic, and that's one of the reasons, for example, that we're looking at neighborhood connector streets this meeting. But we're also trying to move to actions, and so it's not just this hypothetical. And so the reasons that the specific changes are put forth today is because they're things that we have data on and we can act on that are within this kind of step of the systematic approach. They're not, we didn't randomly pick 2 streets to act on. There are 2 streets within the area that we're looking at. Is there anything we can take quick action on? So it's, I guess getting back to the idea of like why this section of Islington versus the other, we'd much rather act on the part that we can act on than wait the whole thing up trying to get everything figured out. But I think we've come up with some pretty good ways to take action comprehensively now, which is good. Sorry for my...
Counselor or Mark, any comments?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm all set.
So I think we have a motion on the floor to accept the recommendations with some modifications. So the adding in Summit Avenue and kind of striking the long-term improvements for the middle road corridor reference in the text.
For the specifics.
For the specifics.
Hey, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a 10:30 ride at my door, so I gotta go.
Okay.
I'll vote yes for this.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you.
And there was another and then
Mark is gonna pay for it.
and then for Islington from Spinney to Middle,
Thank you.
we're gonna make that the pilot, same mechanism that is being referenced on Middle. So taking those as friendly amendments, Harold's good with that? Yep.
The emphasis should be on the downtown issue, downtown advisory speed zone.
Yep, let's come back to that.
What?
Hold that thought.
Okay.
So let's do a roll call vote on the revised motion with the friendly amendments.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa was a yes. Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonic.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Great. Okay, now Harold, and Tyler, let's move to the summary concept. So you are supportive of the downtown advisory speed zone.
Yes, and put emphasis on that issue to the city council.
And I think what the working group is gonna look to do is to come back with some more refinement of where the boundaries are of that, maybe a nicer looking advisory sign than the MUTCD, since this is our tourist historic district.
Our hands might be tied up.
Um, I've got a comment on that particular aspect, and my concern is, we walk everywhere in the city, and I walk downtown from where I live, and a good portion of that walk is not in the downtown zone. I don't want it to come across as we're implying that downtown is more important than other areas of the city, especially other thickly settled areas of the city. So I don't really have a solution for you. But I do worry that if we single out the downtown as, look out for pedestrians, we kind of are also subtly sending the message, we're not so concerned with them elsewhere. So that's just my concern.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point.
And possibly a solution to that would be at entry points into the city. We also put some verbiage up on a sign saying, be aware of pedestrians, Portsmouth is a walkable city.
Yeah, we have to do more work on that, but I hear what you're saying, Counselor.
Counselor Bagley, one of the things we were thinking was that this would really focus on the commercial area, and that was something, the cloud, the fuzzy boundaries that we have right now. I think our intention would be to try and move them to actual boundaries so that we could sign things. And the thought, we as a committee working group went back and forth about what the definition would be, and I think kind of where we were headed was the idea of where's the commercial district and the tourist, really active pedestrian tourist area. Not to say, everything that we see on that map is an active pedestrian area, but really just to emphasize that downtown very slow speed, where there's a lot of traffic, and more importantly, a lot of people from out of town visiting who may not be familiar with the culture of our community and what we're expecting. So that was our thought, but I think our intention of discussing it today is to try and get input from the whole committee about if that makes sense and modifications or.
Councilor, I think what we're trying to do is balance the downtown zone and your point about the rest of the city being important. That was where we were kind of brainstorming about the neighborhood signage. So that might be the gateway sign that accommodates that. So we can fine tune this a little more, but that was the concept, to have the downtown commercial district stand apart, but then have maybe some other gateway signage, neighborhood or gateway, that reminds people about pedestrians walking, Portsmouth's a walkable town, et cetera, so concepts to be worked on.
I think one challenge here also is the state statute doesn't allow legal speed limit posting below 25, and 25 is only permissible with the study, as has come up a number of times today. We have a number of roads, especially in the downtown, that are posted below that, and so that's the speeds that they're posted at are consistent with what we want people to be driving at in that area, but we aren't by state statute allowed to actually post at that speed. So one of the things we're working on is how can we communicate that message to people that the appropriate speed in this area, because it's such an active pedestrian area, is 20, even though the state statute really puts a floor at 25.
So one thing for the general public to note, and for, I'm sure the committee already realizes, that the designation of a yellow sign is a warning. The white sign is the limit. So by putting up a warning sign that says 20, people may perceive that as a speed limit. It's actually not a speed limit, it's an advisory level. So you see it a lot of times coming into a corner, it says slow down, and it's yellow. It's not a white sign, it's not a physical speed limit.
I think the goal on this is to educate and affect behavior. So I think we could do that. So is there, I don't know that we want to take a vote on the concepts, but then the third concept, Harold, as you brought this up many times over the years, the crosswalk approach stencil or decal. They have pavement decals that now are even easier to apply for a season. Is that kind of where you were?
You're talking about making the people educated about looking up from their computer when they press the walk button.
Yes.
Yes, very important. I see it all the time at Congress and Maplewood. I see it all the time at Fleet Street and Maplewood. No, Fleet Street and State Street.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they're pressing the button to walk and then looking at down at the computer. They're not being sensible.
So we would have to work further on the design and messaging. It's not a regulatory thing, it's just an education thing.
A shadow issue, like the bicycles in the lane, is called a shadow?
Shadow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is the sense?
I'm not really in favor of this. It's a lot more painting, it's just a lot of more clutter in the roadways, and I think people need to take responsibility for their actions, and walking with their head down and not paying attention to the world around them is hard. I know, but that's just, we can't, I don't believe we should, those are common sense things that people need to learn. I believe.
Is the sense that we should vote on these concepts at all, vote on them each independently, or?
I would suggest just report back, because these are concepts that you're gonna work on.
Yeah. How about we continue to refine the downtown speed zone, let the crosswalk markers lie for a while. Is that the sense of the group? Counselor? Are you happy with that, Counselor?
Yes, that sounds good to me.
The police chair. In support of Director Rice's statement about painting and whatnot, we need to remember that anything we do, paint and change, is going to have to be upkept from that point forward. And I know that my team leads a lot of that, so that I just want to make sure that we understand that that's part of the ongoing experience when we do those changes.
That's why we threw out the idea of the decals, which are pavement designed, put them down, pull them up. It is two work activities. Got it.
Sidewalk tractors take them right out, and then you have to.
No, they pull up for the fall, and you take them up.
Oh, boy.
Time investment.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we moved on, just to answer those questions that were raised, I think they were answered for the most part. Question one was the extent of the speed limit for Middle Road. It'd be the full length from Peverly to Middle Street. When will the trial period be done? November?
Or 6 months after installation of the signs.
Yep.
Okay, 6 months after the installation of the sign. I like that. What is the criteria for considering lower speed limit
I
permanently?
think-
Well, that has to follow state
Right,
statutes.
state law, and I think we've talked about that, yep.
Yep. Benefits of the trial, Middle Road versus lower speed limit by ordinance. Well, they're different streets.
Different
That was-
issues.
Well, this
Different-
is my speech about
Yeah.
we need to reinforce infrastructure supporting people driving at that lower speed, not just arbitrarily lowering the speed if the speeds aren't actually at that level.
Okay, so I think that
I
answers.
think those were all
well.
covered in our conversation, yep,
Awesome.
thank you.
I just wanted to make sure we did that.
Thanks.
Okay, so we had our motion, we discussed the concepts, we're gonna keep working on those as a group. We'll probably come back to you next agenda with some more, so it's gonna be an ongoing process, so thank you.
Good.
Thank you to my colleagues for all their time on this,
Thanks
too.
to all of you. This
Tyler,
is really
good job,
thorough
Tyler.
work.
Okay, we're at the end of the stretch here. Informational items, 8A. Monthly accident report from the police department.
Sure. So you'll see in March, we had 68 total crashes. 45 of those 68 were reportable. We had no vehicle versus bicycle collisions. There was one pedestrian versus vehicle collision, coincidentally, that occurred in the parking lot of the hospital, where we do have a considerable amount of our crashes are involved in parking lots, of which that was one of them in March. So, tracking along average.
And the,
Yes,
excuse
Mary
me, and the accident that occurred, the woman who came up to speak, the public comment, that was recorded also?
No,
was
that-
April 22nd.
There would have been in April.
April.
And looking at that incident, we don't have that recorded as a motor vehicle accident, because I know the commenter today said that they were hit by the vehicle. Our on-scene determination shows that there was no contact between the vehicle and the person. So I took a note to follow up with her today, because she did say she was struck by the vehicle, but our records indicate that day when the officers met with her and took that report that there was no contact between her and the vehicle.
Okay, so follow
But
up.
knowing that it is still, we have it categorized as a failure to yield to a pedestrian in the crosswalk,
Yeah.
which is a police offense report.
Yeah.
An accident report would involve a collision between a pedestrian and a vehicle.
Okay.
We do not have it categorized as that, because when the officer took the report that day, the officer had no indication or evidence that the two actually struck.
Oh.
So that is why it's being investigated as, it's still open and being investigated as a
Good.
failure to yield for the pedestrian in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
But I heard her today say she was struck, so that's obviously something that we'll have to follow up with. But
Thank you.
that's not what we found that day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the report? Okay. Item B, Islington Street at Vine.
Mr. Chairman, these next three items are ones we are continuing to collect data on and review the video and count volume. So we don't have anything new to present today, except that we are in the process of looking at this data. As the temperatures warm up and we get more pedestrian activity, we should have some better data to report on, should be next month.
Thank you. South Street and Broad.
Same with all three of these issues, and we're collecting data on all three of them.
Right, great. Any items under miscellaneous, new issues, things to talk about? No? Counselor, anything else you want to throw out under miscellaneous this morning?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Can I make a motion, we adjourn?
Harold has made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Second by Peter. Roll call vote, please.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Steve Pesci.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa, absent. Harold Whitehouse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonick.
Yes.
Captain Maloney.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
And Chairman Bagley.
Yes.
Meeting's
Thank you,
adjourned.
everyone. Long meeting, but lots done. Thank you, and thank you to the public.
Thank you.